This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Hope you had a great weekend. We are back at it for another week here on the program, and lots to get to coming out of a very busy weekend, including week one of the Canadian Football League and the red-hot Toronto Blue Jays making a push for the playoffs, finishing up what our guest coming up in about 20 minutes called the best homestand in the team's history. Lots of excitement about the Blue Jays, and certainly here, the Blue Bombers are in first place, and CFL fans rejoicing after getting the 3-down game back on the weekend. We are going to have a great show today. As I mentioned, JD Bunkis from Sportsnet in Toronto will be our guest coming up in about 20 minutes. And then a little later on, we'll break down all of the action in the first 4 CFL games of the year with Justin Dunk from 3 Down Nation. As always, we're brought to you by our great family of sponsors, including Canadian Club Whiskey, Royal Sports, the Nick and Nicky DQ Group, Not Auto Corp, Boston Pizza, Paramount Services Limited, Little Brown Jug Brewing, Assiniboia Downs, Breezy Bend Country Club, and Coolbet Canada. Let's get right to it and welcome in Michael Remis to the program. Remo, what is up? How was the weekend?
Great. It was awesome. We started off with the Bomber game on, Thursday? And then a full slate of CFL games. Loved it. Even had time to go out on Sunday and get a pair of new shoes. So it was definitely a blast.
New kick, yes. People are wondering, Huska, I think, get quite a bit of sun today, or on the weekend.
Might have to change some of the color. We're working with a new camera. We're just figuring out the settings. It does look like you have a bit of a sunburn.
Yes, the CTO did make a house call yesterday before I went out and enjoyed the rest of the weekend, and we got an awesome new camera in, so we'll work around with some of the settings. But no, I'm not taking up the a Trumpian tanning regime or anything, if that's what people are wondering. And yes, no, our extensive makeup department at WST is off this week, so we're just sort of doing with it what we can do. Man, it was a great weekend, though. I got to say, I got out quite a bit, saw some people. It was so nice to see some of these restrictions loosened, and hit the beer can yesterday. Nice little afternoon and a bit of a beer garden. And then obviously it was paying close attention to everything happening around the world of sports. Blue Jays on fire right now. It's got, a lot of excitement about that team, Remis. It sort of is reminding some people of 2015, but what's different about this team is how so much of this core is so young right now, and they're coming into their own seemingly right in front of our eyes, and now just 3 games out of the wild card. The one thing I think this team has done with this incredible homestand that just finished up yesterday with that wild 9-8 win on the George Springer homer is that they're going to be playing meaningful games well into September. And whether the team makes the playoffs or not, when you look at where this team is almost in its infancy as being a legitimate contender, no matter what happens this season, what they've done so far and what they'll be able to accomplish in legitimately playoff atmospheres going forward, going to be great for this team, I think, this season, but more importantly, into the future.
Yeah, I mean, this is pretty exciting. A big homestand over the weekend. Actually, though, it's been a whole big homestand since they returned, going 9-2 since coming back to Toronto. Done with Buffalo, done with Dunedin. I think this is pretty. Here, let me bring myself on. This is pretty awesome to see. We had a walk-off home run on Saturday against Boston, and then again yesterday, George Springer with a big go-ahead home run to help complete the comeback. Look, they made some additions. Springer's healthy. You got the pitching, getting Barrios, bullpen. I think the Jays are in good spot. They're 3 games back for wild card, but there is a lot of runway left. You almost have 2 whole months, and that is a lot of time in Major League Baseball, especially with so much interdivision play.
Off day for the Jays today as they head out to the West Coast. They'll take on the Angels beginning tomorrow. If I'm not mistaken, I think they're actually starting it off with a doubleheader. So we'll get into all that with JD coming up in just a few minutes here on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. We're also going to spend quite a bit of time talking about the Canadian Football League, and Justin Dunk will be on the program a little bit later on. Is before we get into the CFL, Remis, because we're going to have plenty of time to talk about that with our second JD on the program. Some pretty big hockey news today. First and foremost, when it comes to the Winnipeg Jets, all is quiet on the signings front. However, as we were referring to at the end of last week, going into Friday, it's not just a big day for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers hosting their second home game. It's also a big day for the Winnipeg Jets and Neal Pionk, because Friday is the day that the arbitration date is set for the Jets defenseman. So there will be a lot of interest as to whether Pionk's agent, Kevin Cheveldayoff, Larry Simmons, can get a deal done before Friday, or they do go the arbitration route, which I don't really think is in the best interest of anyone. So that will certainly be a date that we'll be talking about and paying attention to, depending on what happens with the Winnipeg Jets and Neal Pionk before that date. But the big news today, Remis, is we've got an Olympic coaching staff. Now, there's still no guarantees that the National Hockey League is going to be going to, or the National Hockey League players and coaches will be going to the Olympics. Certainly, our fingers are crossed that that will take place. But assuming that that does happen, no surprise that John Cooper, back-to-back Stanley Cup champion, is tabbed as the head coach. And a pretty excellent group, including Bruce Cassidy, Peter DeBoer, and Barry Trotz on the Canadian coaching staff. And I had said, as long as Cooper and Trotz are on that staff, I think Canada's in great hands. Obviously, Cassidy and DeBoer have had a lot of success in the National Hockey League as well and have earned the opportunity. But I don't think there was probably much decision about John Cooper. To be honest, the only guy that I think might have been in that mix was Barry Trotz, and he'll be a big part of the coaching staff as well.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised they named the team, considering we don't have a full answer about if they're going or not. So I guess gives you some optimism that Canada's like, hey, if the NHL is going, we will be prepared. And yeah, John Cooper, I mean, back-to-back Stanley Cup champions. He's been with the Lightning for so long. He's won at every level in hockey. Did you know that he used to be a lawyer, Huss? I don't know if you heard that one.
I did hear that.
And
I did hear that once or twice.
Chris Hogan used to play lacrosse too.
Lacrosse guy.
Yeah, but I mean, Barry Trotz. No, those are 2 no-brainers. So we'll see. I guess it makes you kind of optimistic that they did name a staff to see. Okay, maybe they are thinking about going to the Olympics, the NHL. So we'll wait and see. But I think, again, the big week for the Jets, Friday, arbitration for Neal Pionk. Will they go to arbitration? Will they strike a deal before? We'll wait and see. And I see people in chat commenting that all these defense contracts really just wreck the market if you thought you were going to get Neal Pionk at under $6 million. Who was it? The first one was the Jones one, then Makar, Werenski, Nurse recently, $9 million. Like, Pionk had a great year. I don't think you're getting, are you getting him for less than 7 now? Has it just been bumped up like crazy because of all these deals?
It's a great question. I thought about this a lot on the weekend. I guess we finished up the program and I went on 960 with Pat and the guys in Calgary, and we spent quite a bit of time talking about the Nurse contract. And it's always fun talking about Edmonton Oiler things in Calgary, because it's like talking about Rider things in Winnipeg. I mean, there's just that inert rivalry and a cantankerous nature between fans and sometimes even the media having some fun with what's going on in Edmonton. But I mean, there was some crazy sticker shock. I certainly had a bit of a jaw drop. Now, maybe we shouldn't have been surprised considering the other deals that we've seen. But I mean, Darnell Nurse had an incredible season. He had 15, I think, even strength goals. But this was absolutely a career season, and he's going to be getting paid for that year for the next 8 seasons. But, if you're Ken Holland, the urgency to build this team into a championship contender and take advantage of the fact that you've got Connor McDavid, you've got Leon Draisaitl, I think has been ramped up in a big, big way, especially considering the way they bowed out in 4 straight games to the Winnipeg Jets. So they had to keep Darnell Nurse, especially after they lost Adam Larsson, which I think really caught the Edmonton Oilers off guard. But as far as it pertains to our conversations here in Winnipeg with the Winnipeg Jets, Remis, you're exactly right. I mean, I had a number of conversations on the weekend. Like, what do all these numbers mean for Neal Pionk? I mean, Pionk was arguably, I think he was the Jets' best defenseman last year. And he put up really significant numbers for the last 2 seasons and wasn't really playing very often on the number 1 power play unit. Ate a ton of minutes up and did it. I think we can all agree with Derek Forward, who had a nice start of the season, but we really saw the law of diminishing returns. And at times, Pionk was carrying that pairing. So whatever Neal Pionk gets, he'll have earned it. But I do wonder, Remo, how much more difficult it's going to be within the cap constraints of the Winnipeg Jets to get a deal done, preferably long-term with Pionk, considering the 2 seasons he's had in Winnipeg and what the going rate is for legitimate top 4 defensemen in the National Hockey League.
Yeah, that's a great question. We've seen it bumped up. So I think Neal Pionk and his agent are probably licking their lips. I mean, last year, 32 points in 54 games. And I think last year was really his breakout season, although he was pretty good the year before with 45 and 71 just from a points. But he did play on the power play. He was, their top defenseman.
I thought he should have played a lot more on the power play, to be honest with you. I mean, we won't get into the intricacies of, decisions of the coach when it comes to one player or not. But just when it comes to the contract, it's not like he spent the entire season just eating up points on the Jets' number 1 power play unit. That wasn't the case. But he was a big part of a quote unquote power play 2 unit that was as effective as the first one was, maybe just wasn't on the ice as much. You extrapolate what he did in the 56 game season over a course of 82. And we're talking about a guy that's, even had a better season than what he had, 45 points the year before. So he's certainly been there. Now, I believe it was Joe who just mentioned in the chat that Vince Dunn is a comparable and he signed for $4 million with the Kraken. He did on a 2-year deal. And if they don't think they can sign him to, a long-term deal right now, that's probably where this ends up. But I really think that the Jets would love, like they've done with so many of their other players, I think they believe in Neal Pionk. I think they want him here long-term. And that will be the focus of the conversations, I'd imagine, over the next few days. But if it doesn't look realistic to get it done, if the numbers are just too high for what it would take to sign him long-term, I think you end up in a situation where ideally they get a deal done like the Kraken did with Vince Dunn before you get to arbitration and allow Neal Pionk to, get paid fairly on RFA years and then the cost, presuming that he continues to do what he's done for Winnipeg. If he does that for another couple seasons, we'll be talking about a much greater number, albeit going into unrestricted free agent years. And that, I think, is the key thing for a player like Darnell Nurse. You talk about the number. I mean, there was basically all UFA years except for one of them, Remis. And that's why a lot of people sort of open their eyes to Cale Makar's deal, because he got $9 million eating up mostly RFA years, a little bit different. And that was part of the reason why I think Ken Holland had to go as high as he did to get Darnell Nurse signed and committed for the max term to the Edmonton Oilers.
Yeah, and Makar is also, one of the best defensemen in the league. So pay him, whatever he wants. Neal Pionk, not quite in that tier, but if you look at, the way the Jets have their salary structure, and I think, they do like to work within a structure. Okay, your top dog is here and your other guys below, and you kind of have a hierarchy. So right now, Josh Morrissey is making $6.25 million, and I think last year you could definitely argue that Neal Pionk, probably was more important to the Jets and a more effective player than Josh Morrissey. Morrissey had a miserable season, and I think he'd tell you that he needs to be better, and he definitely can be better. But last year, Pionk was the better player, and I think he probably deserves to make a bit more. But will he? We'll have to wait and see what happens. But Friday is the date of the arbitration hearing, and on Friday we're either gonna have a deal, or we're gonna be heading into the weekend with a hearing, and I'll be refreshing Twitter, looking for the results. And we've done this before with Andrew Cobb, so. Hopefully you don't have to do it again, because it seems like it's never a good thing where you end up doing the last resort, that is arbitration.
Well, and unfortunately, I mean, more often than not, that guys go to arbitration don't stay with the teams that they go to arbitration with. And that is why I think with what happened with Andrew Kopp was so impressive, the way he handled it. and the way he flourished over the last couple seasons to this point where he's certainly deserving of a pay raise. And the question is whether he'll get that from Winnipeg and how long of a term it will be. The other option, of course, though, is Remis, if they don't get a deal done, and I'm speaking specifically to Andrew Kopp here, if he goes to arbitration and they go through this again, and we're talking about a 1-year deal and then unrestricted free agency, you would normally think that probably means he's gone and he'll be traded. The Jets could say, you know what, we're going to keep Andrew Kopp for this year. He's going to be a guy, I don't want to call him a rental, if you will, but we'll take our chances at the end of the season with him leaving. He's just too important of a player to not have in the lineup this season. We'll try and replace him next year if we lose him, but maintain him in the lineup. And certainly it would be a much lesser number if you're talking about a 1-year deal of RFA team control as opposed to going into UFA years. So the song and dance between both of the Winnipeg Jets restricted free agents and the hockey club is going to be very interesting. We'll find out the answers, I imagine, for Pionk before Andrew Kopp. And of course, Kopp, as you said, Reem, will somewhat be the main event, is his date, I believe the final day of arbitration hearings, August 26th, and probably one of the most interesting hearings if it does go to that. But I think everybody on both sides are hoping that we won't be talking about a hearing between the Jets and Andrew Kopp at the end of the month.
I'm just picturing, Bruce Buffer before the Andrew Kopp arbitration. And now for the main event of the evening, because I don't know, is that like strategic scheduling? Do the Jets have a say to say, okay, we know this is going to be a hard one, let's put it at the end, or is the NHLPA setting up? I'm kind of curious how those were scheduled in the order, but I'm sure they knew, okay, they're going to need some extra time for the Andrew Kopp one. But that's the one to watch. I keep joking it's the main event of arbitration, and we'll wait and see. Can the Jets even fit both of these guys under the cap? I mean, that's regardless of what you think they're going to pay. Can they fit both? I think that's the other question.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, listen, we'll get to all of that. James Robinson asking in the chat, do arbitrators look for comparable contracts league-wide or just within the organization? Yeah, it's league-wide. You can do all the great work signing players, and then when, defensemen are getting $9.5 million for 8 years, those are your comparables. So you got to deal with that. All right, we're going to talk some baseball. What a weekend it was for the Toronto Blue Jays. JD Bunkis coming up in just a second. Before we do that, I want to welcome on our newest sponsor, Canadian Club Whiskey. I know a few of you were getting into a little CC on the weekend, and certainly in the Jim Beam social hub there at the stadium at the game on Thursday night. And it's just fantastic to have them on board. We've got a couple interesting picks of many people enjoying Canadian Club at the game. And of course, they've also got Jim Beam, Brugal Rum, very familiar with the Brugal Rum Hut over in the corner of the stadium as well, along with Northern Keep Vodka and Sauza Tequila. I can't wait to get to doing some fun Bomber-related promos with the sponsor of the Bombers in the Spirits Department. So we'll look forward to hoisting a CC with all of you at some point at an event very soon, and definitely at the game coming up on Friday at IG Field. Also, big shout out to Royal Sports. We talked on, Friday, after our Canadian women won the gold medal, wondering where the Canadian soccer merch was. And I think that's a bigger problem for Canadian soccer overall, but Royal Sports, is the number one spot for all sports equipment and merchandise. And they have a great spread of Team Canada merch. I'm still waiting. I want to get a personalized Des Scott jersey to celebrate this gold medal. But in the meantime, you can pop by some great gear for both adults and kids. Repping Team Canada Soccer. You can see a couple pictures there. And while you're there, check out. They've also got some great new camping and limited edition Yeti merchandise as a Yeti dealer. Pop down and see them at Royal Sports. Bikes, fitness, hockey, soccer, baseball. They've got it all. 650 Rally and EK and 750 Pembina Highway. And I'm not sure whether DQ Nick's in the house, but did have one of those amazing drumstick blizzards on the weekend. You can debate in the chat which is the best one. Just know that our friends at the Nick and Nicky DQ group are there for you with DQ in Niverville, DQ Northgate, Polo Park, and St. Anne's. And if you're getting back into the swing of things and getting together with friends, you certainly can be the hero. Bring one of those amazing DQ cakes. They'll do it up for you however you want. Hit them on Instagram at DQ Manitoba. Get that order in and pop by and pick it up at any of the 4 Nick and Nicky DQs. Great to have them on board. All right. Really looking forward to this next segment. We've been following the Jays, but everybody is talking about the Blue Jays right now. After a homestand, our next guest referred to as maybe the best in team history. Absolute pleasure to welcome in from Sportsnet 590 and good show. It is JD Bunkis. JD, what's going on? Thanks so much for doing this and welcome to Winnipeg Sports Talk.
Hustler, first of all, what a lineup of sponsors you've got. Heavy hitters, CC, boom, love it. I'm known to tip one back myself. Dairy Queen, summertime, that's your sponsors. And then Canadian soccer jerseys. This is like, you got the trifecta here.
You know what? We are, it's been awesome. I got to say, and you know the business. I mean, we had sort of, we got dealt a pretty bad curveball a few months ago. And honestly, the way not only that people have responded to being able to take our content to a new spot, but the sponsors have really made us able to do it. So it's been an awesome first 5 months, and we can't wait to get into September. Normally, I would have thought that we'd be talking about NFL, CFL, NHL training camps, but there's a baseball team in this country that has moved right into the front page of every sports fan's conversation after a pretty magical 11 games at home. Let me just start off with the homecoming game. I mean, you're there in Toronto, you're on the flagship station. How big was it for the city, the province, and the Canada, but especially there in the GTA to have the Blue Jays back, even playing in smaller crowds at home at the Rogers Center?
I guarantee it was the same. What night was it that the Ticats were in town and you guys had your home opener?
Yeah, that was last Thursday.
It was last Thursday. And I bet if you asked your audience, the people that went there, that it was a lot of excitement and a little bit of nerves because we haven't been in crowds for a long time. But once you sat there and you saw the ceremonies and you heard the anthem and you saw your team come out repping your city, and you're at that game because you know what sports mean to you. There's the odd person that's there because it's the event. But if you're a sports fan, you know what sports mean. And to me, it was, you know, it's a place to have a conversation, but it's also a gathering place. And that's been taken from us for so long because of this virus. And so Friday night and this weekend and this week and this homestand, it's like we've just basically had our version of one long ass Bombers game where it's been emotional. There have been a lot of tears. There's been a lot of just normalcy a little bit where you're high-fiving strangers and you're talking to people that you don't know. Like, think about it. It's all been about bubbles, and it's all been about like your 5 people that you know, your 4 people that you know. And all of a sudden you're reminded that you share this bond with tens of thousands of hundreds of thousands of people that all have this shared experience with you. And so like the team is amazing right now. They're so likable. They're tearing the cover off the baseball. They're getting this incredible starting pitching that's now, you know, 6 deep essentially, where we're having conversations about who's going to go to the pen. But just like, man, why I said it's the best homestand ever is partially unfair because we can just never replicate this feeling of like getting back our community, you know? Like,
No,
so I've just been overwhelmed these last couple of weeks, as I'm sure, again, Bombers fans have been, or anybody that, you know, watches your show or listens is just like, I can't believe we're finally getting there when it felt like at times we never would.
No, JD, it's such a great comparison in that, you know, here there was a wait for a year and a half to finally raise a Grey Cup banner that was 29 years of suffering in the making. Man. But I will say this for the Blue Jays and Raptors are unique because, of course, they're in Toronto and they're Toronto teams, but they sort of are.
People in the city like them.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. But they're also sort of Canada's teams, but specifically there for Blue Jays fans that, you know, normally do go to games and, you know, make it a part of their summer where they're going often or even a few times. The fact that the team wasn't there and they're playing in Dunedin and they're playing in Buffalo while everyone else is playing in their home ballparks. Yeah. And over the last year and a half, watching this team with all that incredible talent turn into the team that everyone was hoping them. I mean, the timing of everything couldn't almost be better, JD, in that this team comes back. You mentioned they start ripping the cover off the ball. Management helps them out with some of the things that they need. And all of a sudden you have the excitement of the return, but almost maybe overshadowed by the excitement of this is a team that people have been waiting for years that seems to be ready to announce their ascension into contender status.
Last time I was at the ballpark, the team sucked. They were horrible. I went from this experience where it was 2015 and 16, and you felt like you had to be down at the ballpark because it was amazing and it was electric and the team was special. And 2017, 18, 19, woof. Like Socrates Brito, I've seen live, Alan Hansen was an acquisition. You just watch the team get torn to shreds and by this new management group that everybody hated and thought had no emotional connection to the team that finally got us back into the playoffs after one of the longest droughts in baseball, other than, your buddy there with the Mariners cap. He's still suffering. You're suffering a while longer, bro. That's going to keep going. Yankees whooped ass and Mariners trading their closer. Not the same ball club. It was bad. Like, you still went to the game, but it was basically like, at the time I was calling it Toronto's biggest patio. Like, that's the way it should be branded because you're not really watching baseball. So to go from that team and then just basically be put in a time machine where all of a sudden you're back into like competitive baseball with a likable group that has superstar players and is adding at the deadline. It's like, I don't know. It's like a surreal feeling. It's crazy. You're going again from these like bums. There's a bummy team to George Springer hitting walk-offs against an all-star closer. It's about as big a discrepancy as what we had here to what we've got now as you can have. So yeah, it's like this team is amazing. You can nitpick with a couple of things, and the division's loaded right now. There's so many good teams, but this is, in my lifetime, the most likable Blue Jays team. And you bring that to fans back at the Rogers Center after not having it for a year and a half. And like, it really, I don't want to get into the like fairy tale stuff with sports, but it really feels that way right now. Like, that's the vibe that you get in this city. That's the vibe you get with this team, is like, they get it.
Well, it's been a long time coming. And I will say, they're not just the most likable Blue Jays team. I mean, they are the most fun team in sports, I think, right now. I mean, you can't not help. I mean, you check your pulse if you're not sort of getting a smile on your face watching what these guys are doing. Let me ask you this, though. This team really hasn't been, as you pointed out, a contender since everything went off the rails after 2015. That was a hell of a team, a little bit more veteran, but what are the similarities between that team and this one, and how are they different in your mind, JB?
Well, I think that they both can hit. 2015, I would definitely take in terms of the lineup. They both have a bat that's going into a West Coast trip at the end of the year, facing an Angels team where the conversation is about who the MVP is. The Angels guy was Mike Trout then. The Blue Jays guy was Josh Donaldson then. And now it's Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Shohei Ohtani. And Vlad slipped a little bit lately since the All-Star break. His numbers are like, his OPS post All-Star break, I think, is somewhere like 870-ish, which is not good enough to get MVP. But if he has a series against the Angels and against Shohei, then we're going to be right back there, just like in 2015, where it was a debate about which guy is the MVP. I think it's Shohei, and that's no knock on Vlad, but both teams have special players. Both teams have special guys in the lineup. The bullpens are very different. Like, this Blue Jays bullpen is trash. They got a couple of guys in there that you feel okay about, but the headliner right now is a soft tossing righty in Adam Simber, who pitches to contact, which is not very 2021 when it comes to baseball. So I would say that's a pretty big discrepancy. But, you've got things like the potential for Nate Pearson to play the Aaron Sanchez role out of the bullpen and show up and really bolster them. And so, yeah, there are a lot of similarities. There's a load up at the deadline. There's giving up on prospects. I would say that one of the other big differences, though, Hustler, is for all the crap this front office took, and I know I seem like Captain Shill because I work for Sportsnet. It's like Rogers, and so I'm like, look at this Rogers guy. Let me shill for these executives for a second here. But they took a lot of crap when they showed up here. They got the Shatkins nickname. Everybody hated their guts. Everybody wanted to run them out of town. And the difference here is that this Jays team is special. 2015, I thought they were the best team in baseball. And so I don't think this group is. I think that they're a little tier down. But the difference is that the farm still has dudes. Alex Anthopoulos completely unloaded it in 2015. And I don't hate him for it, because what he gave up turned out to be not much. Everyone was crying about Jeff Hoffman, and now he's a Reds pitcher with like a 6 ERA. Who cares? But these guys still have an off season ahead of them where they've got, I don't know, 4 of the best prospects in baseball. Like, that's nuts. There's never been symmetry like this between the big league club and the minor league system, where you can make a trade for Jose Barrios, give up someone like Austin Martin, who everybody loved, give up someone like Simeon Woods Richardson, who everybody believed could have been here at some point this season. And you look at the farm and say, there's still a ton of guys that you can move for, say, a Jose Ramirez in the offseason. So if this team keeps kicking ass, this team keeps showing that they're right there on the cusp. They've got 3 starting pitchers that you like going into next season. You got some money to play with because everybody's still on rookie deals where you can go out and you're not in a spot where you have to pay Jose Bautista a big contract or pay Edwin Encarnacion or pay Josh Donaldson, right? Like, these guys are still a couple of years away from their contracts, and you have a little bit of time before Vlad and Bo and those guys start to rack up the cash. So you've got financial flexibility to pay the Robbie Rays, to keep this core together, to pay the Marcus Semyons. You've already gone out and done your free agent bid with George Springer, and now you have these prospects where maybe 1 or 2 of them crack and join this club, but maybe you use 2 or 3 of them and you go out and get another stud piece and you actually become one of the top contenders in baseball. So, like, I don't like how we never live in the moment with sports, because this team is awesome and it's special, as you mentioned. We're always looking at, like, what was the past and what could be the future, but it's hard not to look at the future with this team when you know, like, their star players are in their early 20s. Their most impactful guys are in their primes, and you have money and pieces that you can move around to improve a club that's already good and has one of the best run differentials in baseball. Like, it is truly, 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 truly sports special right now with the Jays. And so I hope that people are just kind of soaking this in, and that, I guess for you guys, it's not staying up as late, but when there's a 10 o'clock game, I don't want to hear anybody bitching about, I don't get to stay up late. Just watch the team. Just shut up and watch the team. It's awesome.
JD Bunkis of Sportsnet talking Blue Jays with us here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. You mentioned George Springer, because so much of the focus has been on these young players, the Biggio, Bichette, Vladdy Guerrero, kind of becoming stars in their own right. They added Springer, and there was a lot of consternation when he wasn't able to play at the start. Did they just pay all this money for a guy that won't be able to take the field? Seems like he's been worth the wait. Tell us about the impact that he's had on this team, and what a guy with that pedigree and experience, a place that he has in a room of a lot of talented but young players without a lot of experience that he brings to the table.
I got my hand up. I had moments where at the beginning of the season, in private conversations with friends, let's just say I wouldn't want those revealed about my George Springer takes. All right? like everybody has their skeletons. Mine are if someone hacks my text messages and shows George Springer text right now that I had like 4 months ago versus what I had now. You're seeing the value of a guy who's been in big games. And I don't think it's a coincidence that when the Blue Jays come home and they face the Red Sox and they have these kind of must-win games in this homestand to galvanize the fan base and really have the energy of this city roll through with this Blue Jays team, because they could have easily, like, if you look at, again, the division and what the teams they're chasing, if the Blue Jays have a 500 homestand or, go a game over 500, they're almost out of it. And George Springer plays his best baseball under bright lights in a big city where everybody is just showing up and invested, and it feels like playoff baseball. And I'll be honest, this guy, so there were some stats that showed that Springer was one of the worst offenders of the old trash can banging, that he was one of the dudes that used it the most. But what you're seeing is a guy basically have his image completely rehabilitated with the stick so far this season, because, he's looking like 1,000 OPS guy, the perfect leadoff guy, and someone where if you look at his track record, he's hit since he was in the minors. He's hit since he was in the University of Connecticut. He's always been a pure hitter. So to me, it's like, yeah, the Astros were cheaters and he cheated on those teams and he deserves it. Like, that's part of who he is forever, man. Like, it is what it is. You cheat, you get busted. It's part of who you are. But he's played in big games. He's played in a lot of big games. He's been the leadoff hitter for a team with a ton of crazy good talent, despite the trash can banging. So I think, like, his professionalism, how he's liked, the way that he approaches everything from base running to defense, that he's like this complete player, not just a one-dimensional guy, and that he's also has the experience of these big moments and also shows these guys about, like, he didn't get paid for a long ass time. He was someone who got his contracts pushed back and service manipulation time, that if you just do things, I guess I shouldn't say the right way, but if you keep being a professional, you can end up as a ticketed free agent who's getting $160 million. You know, you can be the guy who gets paid and then still continues to play this way. So I think he's been one of the leaders. I think that he also shows Blue Jays fans that they're allowed to bitch and moan about free agents not coming here, and, you know, Rogers not ponying up for enough guys, when it's like, yep, there's money. You know, Rogers is going to do all right. They can go out and get free agents. They can pay the Toronto tax. They can get the George Springers. And when you get those free agents, you see the impact that it has on these teams, right? You spend money, you're usually better off. People have been kind of gaslit into this idea that it's all about prospects. And it's like, nah, Toronto's not a small place. Canada's not a small market. It's a huge market. It's top 5 in North America. Go out and spend cash. Go out and get the George Springers of the world, and do it right now while you have Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Bo Bichette on rookie deals, and Nate Pearson potentially coming up, and Alek Manoah, you know? So I think that he's been everything that you could have wanted and more. And if you just look at like why you sign a guy like George Springer, it's about wins above replacement for his position. And I would say even in the 40, has he even played 40 games? I don't even think so. The amount of games that he's played, I think he's already made good on his contract for the first year. Like, even with the injury, which is insane. Like, that's how good he's been. So yeah, could not be a bigger George Springer fan right now. Like, you're asking me right after he hit not a walk-off, but basically a walk-off against the Red Sox. So like, I love the guy to death, but yes, I really do think George Springer has helped transform this franchise. And it's very, very rare in sports where you sign a huge ticket free agent and they exceed expectations, and he's doing that so far.
Yes, the approval rating of one G Springer is Eric just referred to him as the Springer of Rain in the chat. Nice one, Eric.
Ooh,
yeah, like you can use that sometime on the show if you want. JD, put that one.
Except for, here's the thing: Josh Donaldson is not the type of guy who like Josh Donaldson would hear that and he would be pissed off. Like, that's just the facts.
Yeah, well,
but I like it.
He can be. All that being said, and I love your take on, like, let's enjoy this, like, live in the moment and, you know, get fired up for this game tomorrow and focus on the wild card. But for a minute, I mean, big picture, this team, it's not like they're getting blown up after this season. And for a Springer coming in with all of the experience, I mean, you have to get that somehow, regardless of whether this team gets into the playoffs. I think we can all be assured that they're going to be playing meaningful playoff-like games for the remainder of August and into September. How important is that for this team when you look at a window for the next 3-4 years to have put themselves back in a situation where they're not playing out the stretch, and they might get there, they might not. But I mean, to me, this will be foundational for all these players to finally be in games that feel like playoff games even before they get there.
You've been watching sports a long time. And if there's one thing that the Raptors have shown us in this city recently over like the last decade, there's a real benefit to being good and not winning. We get trapped in like championship culture of, did you win a ring? No? Then you're a loser. But realistically, you know this as well as anybody. If you play on a competitive hockey team, year in, year out, you build up those reps, you build up those calluses so that when those moments come, you don't feel like they're too big for you. That applies to all sports. And if you play on a crappy team, it doesn't matter how young your guys are, you start to develop bad habits. Not everyone. There are the special kinds that are able to stay locked in and focus no matter what and have that desire to win. But for other guys, you know, the trappings of becoming a professional athlete, having fame, having money, having notoriety, now having popularity before you even do anything, like, no offense, but look at what happened with the Toronto Maple Leafs. Everybody anointed these three guys as the greatest hockey players who ever lived in this market. And then it turned out like they can't win anything. Might have something to do with the fact that, you know, they never faced an ounce of adversity, maybe like ever. Maybe, just maybe. That's just, again, one guy's thought. Having the Blue Jays be a playoff team last year, where, again, it was like an asterisk-y playoff, but still, you got to face a Rays team that went to the World Series, and you got to know like what the difference is between you and them. And you add a professional hitter like George Springer, you start adding at the deadline, and already in these guys' careers, they're starting to be surrounded by guys who desperately want to win and who have won and who are trying to get their first championship. Like, you don't think it's impactful that they went out and got a guy like Jose Barrios from Minnesota, who was in this market that never won, and now he's rejuvenated, coming to a new place, and like the energy that brings guys, where they look at him and say, look at this dude, I don't want to be that. Like, I don't want to be floating on a bad team for a bunch of years and just trying to keep my numbers up and maybe getting traded at a deadline where I don't have any like ownership over what I can do. These guys are building those repetitions. So that the more times you're faced with adversity, the more times you're put into an uncomfortable situation. You know this as a broadcaster. Like, you know this. This is a truth. Repetitions matter more than anything else. You can be the most talented person in the universe. Doesn't mean jack if you don't keep doing it over and over and over again. Reps. And so these guys, having last year to lean on, and now this season where they come home, feel the pressure of being back in Toronto, now go out on the road and have to maintain that same level of professionalism, be in a race with the New York freaking Yankees, the Boston Red Sox, the Tampa Bay Rays, the Oakland Athletics, like winning regular season for the Athletics and Rays, but franchises that are good year over year over year. You're building those repetitions. You're learning what it's like to play in those big games. And if you just look at some of these other franchises in baseball, right? Like the Detroit Tigers, for example, they've got a great crop of young players. They really do. And they've had some for a while now. Like, how long have they've been rebuilding their baseball team? They don't have as much money to splash around on the springers and types, but it's like eventually you lose enough, you sort of tend to become a loser. And so I think, yeah, these reps for the Jays, what I'm getting at here is like, I think it's just like anything else. The more you do something that matters, the more that you show that you can thrive under pressure, the better off you're going to be in the long run. And so, yeah, when you're in your early 20s, like when I was just like smoking weed and drinking beer and developing no repetitions of anything, drinking CCs, throwing them back, having a rye and water, I wasn't developing any kind of actual meaningful strength other than, the ability to go to the States and drink every person in America under the table.
It's the Yukon background.
Oh, buddy. America and the drink. Have you ever, like, you go to the States, you see them drinking, and you're like, this is pathetic. They think that it's amazing. It's like, that's it. That's the only thing I built up through college. I think that these guys in their early 20s, by the time they're actually hitting their like primes in their age 26, 27 seasons, when they've developed, these computer brains and have every type of thing that's been put in front of them, they're not going to be afraid of success. They're not going to feel overwhelmed in these moments. And so, yes, I do think that all of this could culminate in not just one World Series, but like multiple World Series. We're looking at like 92, 93, where there's a real opportunity where these Blue Jays could be going back to back.
JD Bunkis is with us from Sportsnet talking about the Blue Jays' incredible homestand 9-2. They're on the road to take on the Angels beginning tomorrow. Of course, you can see all the games on Sportsnet. I just wanted to quickly ask you about Barrios, because this was, exactly what this team needed, along with maybe a couple more elite arms in the bullpen. When you and Ben were doing the show, you found out about this trade. I mean, how was it received, and what was the statement that management was making, both to the fan base but also the guys in that dressing room?
So, I was at a wedding, and the news came across the wire that they had gotten him, and I think it was on the Thursday, right, or was it Friday? Either way, it was like the dress rehearsal or rehearsal or whatever. And I'm at a golf course. And so all of a sudden people start coming up to me and asking me about how I feel about the trade. And my initial reaction was, I can't believe they did it, because I had spent a week of shows and Barrios was the only real significant pitcher that was available. And the last conversation I had with Morosi was his asking price is just going to be too high because they're in such a great position of leverage. And the front office that the Blue Jays had, and made me question whether they would make a move like that, whether they would be willing to give up a ton of an overpay of prospect capital to bring somebody in this season when it looked like playoffs was a bit of a long shot fighting for only the second wild card. I love the trade. Again, if the Blue Jays only had those two guys down at the farm, I'd look at this a little differently and say, boy, now, there's a lot of pressure on you re-signing Ray and Semien and making sure that you guys can get out in free agency and address this team, because there's only one pathway forward. But upon reflection, it seemed like Austin Martin was not as coveted within the organization as fans thought he was, just because he slipped in the draft. And this stuff generally tends to happen after a player gets dealt, is people start to kind of crap all over the prospect, and then they're not that high on him. It's like a way of breaking up, right? She's not that into you, and all of a sudden you're not that into her either, right? So I think that's a bit of a byproduct here. Simeon Woods-Richardson, I had no problem with, because they traded Marcus Stroman for him, and they were bad for a couple of seasons. His value went up, and they basically turned Marcus Stroman, who was never going to be here long term, into a meaningful piece to get you Jose Barrios in a window where you're trying to win. So basically, to me, it was like you were just renting Simeon Woods-Richardson for a moment like this. So I like that part of the deal. Now they have Aurelvis Martinez in the system. They have Gabriel Moreno. They still have Jordan Groshans. And those three guys, those three position players, they, from people I've spoken with, were all ahead of where Austin Martin was on the depth chart when it came to prospects. So at first, when I saw the names that were attached to this, it was a two things can be true thing, right? Where I was excited for Barrios, but I was like, oh man, I've kind of grown accustomed or attached to these prospects. And I really wanted to see how Austin Martin especially was going to play out. But when you separate yourself from the moment of, oh crap, we've lost these prospects, and you jump right into being back at the Rogers Center, and Barrios is shutting teams down and punches out 7 guys in his first start, and then 6 in a shortened game against the Red Sox where all he gives up is a wall scraper home run, you go like, Simeon Woods-Richardson might be good. In 3 years, he could be maybe Jose Barrios. I'm not waiting on that. And Austin Martin plays the same position as Bo Bichette or maybe George Springer. And I feel pretty good about where the Blue Jays are at with that right now. And they've got a bunch of other prospects, so he was expendable. And that's what good teams do. They take from an area of surplus and they address areas of need, and they try and win. And I just think that trying to win is a lot more fun than waiting on the idea of winning and keep kicking the can down the road and being like an Oklahoma City Thunder fan where you're like, we have all these draft picks. It's like, cool. What, you got to watch 82 games of Oklahoma City Thunder suck ass. That doesn't seem worth it to me. I'd rather watch the winning than like read Baseball America about how Austin Martin was great at AA.
Yeah, it's never a great thing when the most exciting day every year for your franchise is the draft and the draft lottery. And that's certainly not where the Jays
the
are.
ping pong balls. Like, go to the casino. Go to the casino. It's way better. You're actually getting something or losing something. Like, go there. You'll be fine.
JD, this has been so much fun having you on the program. Folks, you should definitely give him a follow on Twitter and on Instagram. Fellow Coolbet guy like myself, so we'll put out some fun parlays and bets at times. And where can folks listen to you? Fill us in on the show, and when people will be able to tune in and check out. I imagine there'll be a lot of fun Blue Jays talk coming up on Good Show.
Yeah, it's almost like the Blue Jays are so exciting right now that I feel guilty talking about the NFL. Like, I had Mike Florio on today. There's all these interesting things going on with the NFL and the quarterbacks, and I want to talk about like Trey Lance, and you feel guilty bringing up anything where you're like, okay, we got to shuffle on because people just want to hear about this Blue Jays team right now. So yeah, plenty of Blue Jays talk, 9 to noon Eastern time here in Toronto. You can stream on sportsnet.ca. You can get the podcast wherever they're available, Spotify, iTunes. You hit that follow button. Same thing. I post it on my Instagram and on my Twitter every single day. So you follow either of those two things, you'll figure it out. I think if people are here, they're watching you, they can figure it out.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, just on the way out, anyone in Toronto notice the Argos' big win on the weekend?
No. Buddy, this is the crazy thing. I love the CFL. I actually grew up like a Ticats fan because I ran into that 99 team at a birthday party of mine when I was in Edmonton at a Planet Hollywood in the mall. And so it was like, I ran into Joe Mont. I didn't know who any of these people were. My dad did. So he was like, go up and talk to these Ticats players. I have them framed, all the autographs on a back of a Planet Hollywood menu over on the wall over there. And so I grew up, and then they won, right? They won a Grey Cup, 99, and I'm a kid, and so I'm thrilled. And so I stayed a CFL fan my whole life. I will be heartbroken. Like, I talked to Brunt about this the other day about what the future of the CFL was, because I'm sure that your audience is stoked that this XFL thing fell through. But God, as long as Toronto's around, I just don't trust their interests in the league. Like, I just don't trust where the Argos are at versus the rest of the CFL. Maybe like Montreal and BC. I don't know what's up with them because BC still doesn't have the owner, and Montreal is like, who knows what's going on in that province all the time. We're not speaking the same language. So it's like, who knows what they're up to. But like, seeing an opener where it's Ticats Bombers, and just like, we know the teams that matter. We know the teams that it's supposed to be protecting something. And so like Toronto doesn't care. I love going to the games. It's such a great live event. Every time I bring someone to an Argos game in the city, they're always like, oh my God, this is so good. Like, I know it's really good. People here, I don't mean to crap on Toronto people because I live here, but it's a high event city. And to them, the NFL is the only thing that's like worth people's times. If it's not the best, then it's the worst. And it breaks my heart because the Argos play in this beautiful stadium and it's professional football. You get to go see some of the best athletes on the planet, and it's our game, and nobody shows up here and nobody cares. So I honestly think like the best case scenario, as much as I hate this, because there are real Argo fans, right? Like there really are.
Oh, for sure there are.
But part of me is just kind of hoping that the CFL stays like a 16 league or adds a couple of other teams. I don't know how it's viable to do that with teams from out east or whatever, but that teams like Toronto just beat it and go to the XFL and that they don't drag everybody with them. That's my hope and a prayer. Because we both know that like Winnipeg and Saskatchewan, like they're going to be financially fine organizations. They don't need the Toronto bailout. Maybe the TV stuff will change, but all I know is that it would break my heart if Toronto ruins the CFL. Like I cannot have that. And like there's whispers that they are the ones who want to ruin it.
Well, that certainly, I think, was where all that talk in the offseason went. And I mean, for me, I echo your thoughts too. That is Justin Dunk. We're going from one JD to another JD coming up. It's kind of cool how the guys can see each other on the thing.
I know. That's my boy right there, though. Dunker. Love you, buddy. Good
you nailed it. So, yeah, we're going to dive big time into the 3-down game after the weekend. And I tell you what, JD, this was so much fun. Thank you for doing this. Hopefully we can do this again sometime and keep up the great
brother,
work.
you know
Loving the show. And love to see those parlays you're cranking out on the IG. Let's get a W tonight.
Big random baseball night. No Blue Jays. Got to gamble. Coolbet. You know the drill. You,
awesome. Thanks again, dude.
Yep.
There he is. That's JD Bunkis. Give him a follow on Twitter and, of course, on Instagram. And it's a great part of the Coolbet family. He's got his branded The Cowards Parlay, which often comes through. It's been a lot of fun. Anyways, he was great. And we'll talk about the good side of the Canadian Football League and what we saw with Justin Dunk right away. But man, the excitement about the Toronto Blue Jays after this homestand with these young players, and we've talked a lot about fun in the last couple of weeks here on this program with Nate Schmidt coming in and the sort of energy that he brings to a team that was maybe at times a little stiff. Weren't really saying that about the Jays at any point, but I mean, with the home run jacket and tying up Vladdy in the dugout, and I mean, they are just so much fun to watch. And now they're winning the way they are right now. It's going to be a very, very fun next couple months for the Blue Jays and their fans. All right, we're going to get to CFL talk coming right away with Justin Dunk from 3Down Nation. Do want to thank another one of our great new sponsors, Paramount Services Limited. My buddy Kerry O'Brien and the great staff over there are doing an amazing job servicing company, restaurant, convenience store, commercial, HVAC, plumbing, electrical, handyman services, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year for the past 28 years in Western Canada. If you're looking for a one-stop shop for your kitchen or cooler supplies for your business or property in Western Canada, give Joel a call for all the kitchen and cooler supplies, or our buddy Kerry O'Brien, and you can visit their website at ParamountServicesLTD.com for more information. And in addition, on top of if you're in that business and have needs, they'll certainly take care of you as they continue to grow. Always looking for people. So if you know any qualified techs or people with experience in HVAC, plumbing, electrical, or handyman services, you can go to your website and submit your resume today. Again, that's ParamountServicesLTD.com. We'll be getting together with the Knott boys coming up on Friday for the game. And I think we'll be going in the big Knott bus to the stadium. But in the meantime, if you're looking for a great vehicle, maybe a little smaller than the Knott bus, head on down to Knott Auto Corp at Waverly and McGillivray. Just saw on their Instagram feed on the weekend, just a couple absolutely beautiful vehicles going off the lot. You can find out more about their Teslas, SUVs. They've got literally an incredible selection of vehicles, not all super high end, but many of them as well. So before you make your decision on your next car, make sure you talk to the experts over at Knott. Why not get a great deal on the car of your dreams at Knott Auto Corp, Waverly and McGillivray, or check them out online at knott.ca. And I will, hands up, if you made it to a BP patio on the weekend, I certainly did. I went with wings and pizza, but I have had this special honey dill fried chicken sandwich that everyone in Winnipeg is loving for obvious reasons. They've also got the burger Italiano on the summer menu. And the next time you're on the patio, try the new Bulldog Margarita Fish Bowl, or the White Sangria Smash, the Peachy Mojito Royale, or the Galaxy Fish Bowl, all available at your local Boston Pizza. And of course, everything available now for takeout, delivery, and dining in with the restrictions loosened. All right, let's get to some three-down football. What a crazy weekend it was, and we probably shouldn't have expected any different. Let's welcome in Justin Dunk from Three Down Nation to look back at week one of the return of the CFL. JD, what's up? It's great to have you back. And before we talk about the ins and outs of what happened on the field, how great was it to see that crowd full in Winnipeg, the Ticats and Bombers go at it, and 3 more games as the CFL finally returned after all this time off?
It was glorious, my man. I'm sure you were eating it up out there, like you said, the Boston Pizza patio or whatever you were having out there, but it was amazing to finally see it.
It was, I can tell you, the atmosphere in Winnipeg was one of, it was a combination of a bunch of things. I mean, first and foremost, for so many people, this was the first event that they had been to in probably a year and a half. First time they'd been around crowds that they'd been. And unlike in some other places, I think it was even more celebratory and festive, not only because the Grey Cup banner was going up, but because everyone in that building knew that everybody else was double vaxxed. And I think there was a real level of comfort, I think, for everybody there. But on top of that, you had, coming back, a beautiful night, getting to the stadium, seeing so many people, frankly, that you just hadn't bumped into in the better part of 2 years. I mean, it was such a magical night just from a spectator perspective as far as life goes. And then you have the Bombers go out and shut it down after giving up 6 in the first quarter. I mean, hard to imagine things going any better for the Grey Cup champs in game number 1 of the season.
About a perfect script as you could have done it if you were Mike O'Shea, the head coach for the Bombers. They ran the rock. The defense was in the face of Jeremiah Masoli all night, led by Willie Jefferson, gets the pick too. And you're right, Hustler. The Bombers come out of the gate looking like they are back-to-back material. They return a lot of that coaching staff. Buck Pierce knew as the offensive coordinator, but really overall, they look dynamic. The key to me, Huss, the offensive line. To me, it still is the best in the league. And it really doesn't matter, with all due respect to Andrew Harris, who's running the rock. Brady Oliveira, Johnny Augustine, Harris. I don't care who you put behind there. You might even fall forward for a couple of yards there, Huss. They're going to look good.
Well, and I have to say, part of the reason why I was still really bullish on the Bombers coming in, despite all the unknowns of the time off, is the fact that, this team won the Grey Cup on kicking their opponent's ass on both sides of the line of scrimmage. It happened in Calgary, and it happened again. And that is the foundation for success in professional football. Zach Collaros is a guy that hasn't had the benefit of an elite offensive line in front of him at times in his career. And part of that's, contributed to, some injuries. Well, if you're Zach Collaros right now coming out of that game, how excited are you to know that you're going to be playing behind Stanley Bryan and Jamarcus Hardrick and that gang? And what does that mean for the potential of Zach Collaros as a starting QB for a full season?
It means if he can stay healthy, he'll be in the MOP conversation, certainly. And that means the Bombers will be contending in the West Division and for the Grey Cup as well. He looked like vintage Collaros on a number of those snaps. You could see him moving around the pocket when he had to. He looked like that confident Collaros that we saw way back in 2015 before he suffered that knee injury. To me, he looked rejuvenated. He's got the new hairstyle, new helmet, rocking number 8, looks slim and trim with the single digit. He knows he's got targets down the field. He's clearly developed a strong rapport with Kenny Lawler. We saw him fire a bunch of targets his way. So when he gets Darvin Adams back in the lineup, could be even better. And I'm curious to see what will happen as the season goes along and he gets even more comfortable in Buck Pierce's offense.
Yeah, and you mentioned Brady Oliveira. Everyone was talking about Brady Oliveira all weekend because the Dodo tweeted out that 3-minute video of him rescuing a bunch of puppies. And if he wasn't popular enough in Winnipeg already, people saw that, and now they're completely sold. Pretty incredible debut, though, for him. And you want to talk about a rookie. And this is something that an offensive line does for a running back. The confidence that he gained throughout the game as they started to exert their will on the Ticats defensive front. I mean, you saw, what was it, 4 consecutive 10-yard runs in the fourth quarter? I mean, for a young man making his CFL debut, never mind in front of friends and family in a special night in his hometown. If people were worried about the succession plan after Andrew Harris with Canadian running backs, it certainly seems like the Kyle Walters and the gang have filled the funnel perfectly for Winnipeg going forward, regardless of, what the situation might be with the veteran Andrew Harris going for the rest of the season.
With all due respect, again, to Andrew Harris, don't be worried about the succession plan, because part of it is the offensive line and them being so good. And Brady Oliveira and his love for dogs, well, to compare him to a dog, scouts have called him a pit bull as a runner. That guy runs so physical and hard. He's feisty, difficult to get down. And to me, it's just the start. And, if he gets nicked up or needs a breather, Johnny Augustine behind him has proved that he can get it done as well behind that offensive line. So I really think the Bombers are in a great situation, especially in game one, where you're coming off nearly 2 years of not playing football. You're worried about your conditioning. Well, you can rely on firing off the football through the offensive line, being physical and wearing down the other team.
Justin Dunk's with us here on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. The Friday night game between the Riders and Lions was bizarre on so many levels. I had a BC plus 6.5 ticket. The fact that came in as one of the most legendary backdoor covers, we will never forget. But aside from the gambling side of it, which was crazy enough, what did you make of this? Michael, I was about to call him Michael Riley starting, then he's not starting, Nathan Rourke in, the bizarre interview with Rick Campbell at halftime, and then who's out starting the third quarter, and then some of the passes that he actually completed, I don't know whether we'll ever see as poorly thrown balls completed in the Canadian Football League the way that they were. I mean, I still can't really, I'd almost need to watch that game again to believe what I saw.
Agreed, man. And the easiest way to explain it all is that Mike Riley was deciding what was going on the entire way. He had been cleared by the medical team. They had shot him up a couple times from what I've been able to gather. One before the game, one at halftime. That's why he came out in the second half. And he was the one making the decisions. He literally told Nathan Rourke, the Canadian quarterback who's the backup there, and maybe the starter in the long term, that he was going to start the game after the coin toss. And then, as you mentioned, Campbell does the halftime interview, goes back to the bench. All of a sudden, Riley says, "Hey, I feel good to go. I'm going in the game." So to me, it's easy. Michael Riley, I should say, was driving the decisions there. Although, Huss, I would argue that they should have stuck with Rourke the entire way, no matter what. Because number one, it shows that Campbell has control of his football team as much as he has respect for Riley. And in that second quarter, we saw Rourke settle in, throw the touchdown down the sideline to Lucky Whitehead, and really start moving the ball. He kicked a field goal before halftime as well. I'm not saying he would have led the comeback, but we saw what Rourke did when he got back in the fourth quarter, leads another touchdown drive, throws a dime to Brian Burnham. So let the kid play. Don't hinder his development and be jerking him around with a quarterback who came into the game hurt and didn't feel like he could take the field.
What are the takeaways from the Riders? I mean, they were up 31-0 and ended up barely hanging on at the end of the game.
It's cliche in a way, but Craig Dickinson talked about it in their green and white scrimmage, that the conditioning just flat out wasn't there and they weren't ready to play a football game. And to me, watching that second half, that's really what happened, right? They came out with so much energy, a packed house at Mosaic Stadium, over 33,000 fans there, really using that to drive them in the first half, get out to that big, as you said, 31-0 lead. But in the second half, it seems like they got to get used to playing a full 60-minute football game again, because if it wasn't for some missed kicks on the BC side and the convert as well, then easily the Lions could have came back and won that game by a point or two.
No doubt about it. Justin Dunk of 3 Down Nation is with us, wrapping week 1 of the Canadian Football League schedule. We had the doubleheader in Alberta. I mean, underdogs went crazy. Underdogs were 4-0 against the spread. Underdogs were 3-1 straight up. But I put it out on Twitter. There was one guy that actually parlayed Ottawa and Toronto to win and won about $1,000 on it, sent the ticket. So credit to him. That is crazy. Well, let's start with the Toronto game. Shout out to Ryan Dinwiddie, former Bomber quarterback. As many people have mentioned online, his coaching debut ended up a little better than his quarterback debut, which of course was 2007 for the Bombers in that Grey Cup. I didn't know what to expect from Toronto. I knew they got some good players. They spent a lot of money, but this was an entirely new team with a rookie head coach, and they go in and beat the Calgary Stampeders on the road. Bo Levi was 11-0 against Toronto before. How impressive was the Toronto performance, the coaching performance of Ryan Dinwiddie, and what should the Stamps take away from this home loss?
First, for the Argos, really impressive to go in there with an all-new coaching staff and a bunch of new players that have really just come together in one training camp and beat the Stamps, who largely kept the same coaching staff and, of course, had Bo Levi Mitchell at quarterback. But to me, it shows that the Argos have come together quickly and that talent has really come together in a fast way. And by that, I mean the NFLers, right? Shane Ray maybe didn't register a stack, definitely didn't, I should say, but the former NFL first-round pick looked like he acquitted himself to the game well, and they certainly look like they're going to be difficult on both sides of the ball. Lots of playmakers on offense, and the defense is stout, led by Charleston Hughes. For the Stamps on the other side, they're young. Bo Levi Mitchell admitted it after the game. He actually said, quote, they felt like they gift-wrapped, close quote, the win to the Argos. So overall, the Stamps are young. And to be quite honest, Hustler, they normally do start the season a little bit slow, right? Even when they win, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 games in a season in recent years, those first couple ones are shaky. Like, let's go all the way back to 2019. They lost to the Ottawa Redblacks in week 2, and the Redblacks finished that year 3-15. So something's up with the Stamps there, starting the season slow, but I have no worries about them contending.
Well, and then we went to the nightcap. Edmonton was the biggest favorite of the weekend against the Ottawa Redblacks, who everyone had penciled in to be the worst team in the league and potentially wouldn't win a game. Well, they're 1-0 right now. Credit to and congratulations to Paul Appolise and to Matt Nichols. Although I will say, I don't think that's the way you write up a victory, throwing for, 70 yards? I mean, how did that happen?
Well, the stout Edmonton Elks defense, man, the killer bees off the edge, Kwaku Boateng and Matthew Betts were as advertised. And to be honest, a large part of it, too, was Matt Nichols not being able to push the football down the field. I believe he only had one completion over 10, 15, or 20 yards in that range. So to me, you're going to have to improve that going forward. It was a bit of an anomaly game. I'll give them credit for the win, no doubt. But if they can actually keep winning, that's going to be the key here. And to be able to do it, they're going to have some more offensive production than like 100 yards in a game, man.
Well, what do we take from, was Ottawa's defense way better than everyone thought, or was Edmonton just not able to execute? They certainly didn't execute very well on the play that ended up flipping the game, which was the pick 6 in the fourth quarter.
To me, that Ottawa defense, I felt like was going to be stout. The issue with them was going to be how much would they be on the field, because could the offense actually move the football? Now, I wasn't worried about it. Antoine Pruneau, a veteran guy, proven there in the back end. Clearly, his leadership role played a part in what they were able to do against Edmonton, picking off Trevor Harris 3 times. Abdul Kanay, veteran guy, been there, done it, has won a Grey Cup as well. We all know that famous tackle on Andrew Buckley to help them hoist the mug. But the issues are going to be on offense. I think the defense is stout. There's some playmakers there. Avery Williams at the linebacker position. And then up front, you got some young pass rushers who I think could come into their own. Cleon Lang's a proven commodity in the middle. So the defense is solid. It's the offense. And Paul Appolise is a guru, and give him credit. He's going to create chaos for the defense and move people around. People have seen that in Winnipeg for years. But there are people in the league that are questioning the talent and ultimately wondering, is Nichols' shoulder all right?
Justin Dunk, a 3-Down Nation with us here, wrapping week 1 of the Canadian Football League on Winnipeg Sports Talk. So let's focus on the good. What stood out to you from a positive standpoint on the field of the first 4 games, JD?
Hustler, you're going to learn this real quick if we keep talking CFL ball, that anytime a Canadian quarterback plays, that's going to be my number 1 storyline. All right. So just so you know, for the future.
Fill people in on the background for Nathan Rourke, by the way. Well, we talk about him, because I think a lot of people are like, what? He's Canadian? Wow, that never happens.
Exactly. So I'll give it to you as quick as I can. He was born in Victoria, moved to Oakville, played a couple of years of high school ball at Holy Trinity Catholic High School in Oakville. Then he felt like to get the NCAA offers that he wanted, he actually moved and finished his last 2 years of high school at Edgewood Academy in Alabama. So we're talking legit football down there. He won a state title or two, had a lot of big stats, but didn't get the offer he wanted. Went to Fort Scott Community College. Again, wasn't sure of the offers he was going to get, even though he turned that program around, had a good statistical season. Ohio University comes calling out of the MAC, #MACtion, and he becomes a 3-year starter there, leads them to 3 straight bowl victories, has a career that statistically was one of the best, if not the best, in Ohio Bobcats history in terms of throwing the football and rushing the football for a quarterback. Then he gets selected in the second round by the BC Lions of the 2020 draft, sits out the year, obviously, because the season was canceled. The New York Giants in the spring bring him in for a workout, a look-see as a receiver, maybe a slash guy, kind of like a Taysom Hill. Doesn't end up getting a contract, but gets some positive reviews from the Giants. And then all he does is go to CFL training camp with the Lions, learn the offense quickly enough to go out in his debut and throw 2 touchdowns, and did not look phased at all. So to me, that's why it's a number one storyline, because we talk about it all the time in the league. Well, can we see a Canadian quarterback, or do they need to be given a chance? Like, I'm not saying he should be in the game over Michael Riley when he's healthy, but clearly Rourke right now is the better option. And for the future of the league, they should be crossing their fingers and their toes and looking up to the heavens, hoping that Rourke can become a superstar.
You know, just while we're on the topic of Canadian quarterbacks, and you mentioned as one, and as someone that is very close to your heart. I mean, there's been all sorts of discussions about what the CFL could do to help promote Canadians at that quarterback position. If you were Randy Ambrosie, what steps might you take to help us maybe get a few more Nathan Rourkes out there on the field in CFL games?
It's simple. First of all, I wouldn't want to have to mandate anything, but it's clear that you do. I think there's inherent bias, especially from the American coaches, that the Canadian quarterbacks are just not good enough. I would argue that until the day is long, or whatever cliche you want to throw in there, that if you put, let's say, for example, right now, Adam Sinagra, who was a star at the University of Calgary, won the Heck Crichton Trophy, led the University of Calgary Dinos to the 2019 Vanier Cup, against any rookie American quarterback that wants to come up here from the NCAA, that Sinagra off the jump would be better, because he understands the game. He understands the 12th man on the field. He knows what it's like to make the throws on a wider field. So overall, to me, I wish that there didn't have to be anything mandated. That said, I think there needs to be, and it's simple. Make every team carry a Canadian quarterback. I don't care how you want to designate him. He doesn't even have to be on the active roster. Pay him the minimum salary at least, or, the teams can pay them more if they want to, if they covet a player, and have them be developed. So really $65,000 per team, I think that's easily worth it to be developing a Canadian quarterback and potentially have not just a star, but a superstar. If Nathan Rourke becomes a starting caliber quarterback and is in the mix every year to win the Grey Cup and win the MOP, there will be all kinds of people that pay attention.
Justin Dunks with us here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Justin, what are they saying in Hamilton about game number 1? People pretty fired up about what the Winnipeg Blue Bombers were able to do, but I imagine that wasn't quite what Orlando Stanheier and everyone, both in the organization and fans, were expecting to see after 18 plus months to chew on what happened in Calgary and putting up only 6 on the board in the opener.
Yeah, there was a little concern, let's say, among Tiger Cats fans in Hamilton, where I actually am right now. And there were people even on social media, or people that reached out to me saying, well, why didn't they at least warm up Dane Evans on the sidelines? Why didn't they put Dane Evans in the game? To be quite honest, that would have been completely unfair to Jeremiah Masoli to do that. He was given a couple of young tackles there on the outside, both making just their second career starts. The only other starts that they had was back in 2019, the last week of the season against the Argos, in a game that meant nothing because the Ticats had already clinched the East Division with that 15-3 record. So overall, to me, there is a question there of, can the Ticats be a more physical football team, Hustler? Because the last 2 times we've seen them play, and yes, it's both been against the Bombers have just physically beat them up the entire game, and especially the offensive line. Now, the Ticats were able to score on that first drive, but largely because they went up-tempo and I think caught Winnipeg off guard there. So there are some questions about, can the Ticats meet that level of physicality? I don't think there's any questions about them contending in the East because of how the Red Blacks look, and even the Alouettes have some holes. The Argos could give them a legitimate push, but they got to figure out how to raise that level of physicality. And when they get punched in the mouth, they got to punch back and deliver a knockout blow, especially if they face the Bombers again.
You know, and as far as the Bombers go on defense, I mean, the one question I had, and I think a lot of people had, was, you know, the defensive secondary. When you lose Sales and you lose Rose from a championship team, you know the linebackers are going to be there. You know, Willie Jefferson's back, but that still is a lot of pressure in the 3-down game. I mean, Alfred Nichols, I mean, how impressed were you with these young men making their first CFL starts and the way they acquitted themselves against a very good Hamilton team?
That certainly did stand out from that game because the questions in the secondary were there. And you have the likes of a Brandon Banks, a Jalen Ackland who can make acrobatic catches, Jalen Marshall, who was in the lineup for an injured Braylon Addison. You have some targets there that have proven. Obviously, the reigning CFL MLP is Speedy B, and they largely held him in check. Now, I was talking to some people around the league, and they said, hey, the book's out on the Ticats. It's easy. Get up and press them, be physical with those receivers, and then obviously, you know, let your front four, if you can, get after the quarterback. Easy for Winnipeg to do because of those bookends that they have with Jeffcoat and Jackson Jeffcoat and Willie Jefferson. But the fact that the back end held up as well as it did, especially in contested situations, has to be a positive for Mike O'Shea and his group going forward.
Justin, the one team we didn't see this week is the Montreal Alouettes. Where are they right now coming into this season? And what are your expectations for Montreal? Will they be a contender in the East?
There are some people that will wonder, well, can Vernon Adams Jr. put another season together? And can he be consistent, Hustler? Because we've seen it in the past where he can look great on one play, but on the next play, he's running around and throws an ill-advised pick. So he has to show that he can be more consistent. But certainly the Owls seem like they can be in contention in the East for at least a playoff spot, if not more. They have weapons there. Geno Lewis, Quan Bray, probably top among them. BJ Cunningham as well. William Stanbeck arguably is the best running back in the league, and I don't think got a fair shot in the NFL, but nonetheless, he's with the Owls. And then on defense, they finally get a proven pass rusher off the edge that's younger. John Bowman moves on. They bring Nick Usher in there. They have Almondo Sewell, who's still an absolute beast. I don't care what age he is. But to me, you look at linebacker, how can they replace Enoch Mwamba in the middle? I think he was an invaluable presence, and probably they should have re-signed him. They elected to not. And there's some questions in the secondary as well. You have a Greg Reed who was all-star caliber in 2019, but to me, that's where I start to get a little bit worried, is that other defensive line spots other than Usher and Sewell, and also at middle linebacker and some of the spots in the secondary, and even on the offensive line as well. They lose Trey Rutherford to retirement. He's moved on to be a police officer, and that guy was about to become one of the best, if not the best, interior Canadian offensive lineman. Check that. Even offensive lineman in the league, and they didn't find a way to replace him. You're not going to be able to do that, but that gives me cause for concern when they're trying to protect Vernon Adams Jr.
It sets up a very interesting matchup on Saturday afternoon in Edmonton, in that the Montreal Alouettes haven't played a game. They go in to play Edmonton, who did play one and are probably still wondering how the hell they lost to the Ottawa Red Blacks in the fashion that they did.
Yeah. I mean, something we shouldn't joke about is a COVID situation that they had there, right? 2 players tested positive. Brian Walker, the linebacker, and Sir Vincent Rogers, as we first reported on 3 Down Nation, tested positive as well last week. So they were dealing with those issues. They didn't have their walkthroughs. I'm sure their meetings were affected. There was no media availability, which I'm sure they were actually happy to miss. But overall, there was some things going on behind the scenes there that I don't think anyone's really giving any light to, or saying, you know, this might have been a reason why they lost. Now, the players won't use it as an excuse, but that's got to be a little jarring when a couple of your teammates test positive in week 1 of the season, just before your first game, on the heels of when the CFL have enacted a policy that if you're not over that 85% vaccination rate and an outbreak happens, you don't get paid. So I think that hasn't been talked about literally at all as part of the reason why maybe Edmonton wasn't in the best headspace going in that game.
Hey, speaking of that numbers, I mean, I'm not sure if anyone knows this, but if anyone does, it would be you. How many teams are at that level? I mean, how are the CFL teams doing with vaccinations? Are there any that are in, you know, a more precarious position than others?
There's 3 teams over that level. We're not exactly sure who they are yet. The Saskatchewan Roughriders, as of last week, Craig Dickinson said the Riders were not one of those teams, but he felt like they would get there fairly quickly. The Lions have come out and said that they use training camp in Kamloops to get a lot of players vaccinated, because obviously everyone was there and the public health system that we have in Canada will allow that. So the lowest team was at 67%. And there were some other teams that were getting close to that 85% number. So it's trending in that direction. You already have 3 over, and I would imagine there's a few others that are really close. So it's hard to say when that exactly is going to happen, but that's how the numbers look like right now.
JD, what are you and our pal John Hodge have cooking up this weekend heading into week 2 over at 3 Down Nation?
All right, my man. So I'm going to tease a new weekly feature that we're going to have called the MLP race. So everyone does power rankings. That's tried and tested and true. Yeah, it works. People get mad at lists and they get mad where you rank their favorite team. Of course, you know how that works, Hustler. But what we're going to do is literally every single week, essentially like the Heisman Watch, we are going to rank who we feel like are the leading candidates for the MLP award. So we're going to do it with 9 players, but we're not going to make it team specific, because ultimately at the end of the year, you have 9 candidates that come from 9 different teams. But in my mind, those aren't necessarily set until the end of the year. So the MLP race will come out tomorrow as well. And then also I've been working on the TV ratings piece from week 1. I can give you a little tease on that the ratings for the opening game of the 2021 season compared to the 2019 season were up.
Well, and I saw our pal Adam Seaborn tweeting about that on the weekend. And just before we go, I mean, that's a significant announcement in that it doesn't matter what sport. I mean, if you look at what's happened to TV numbers over the course of the past 2 years, everything is down across the board. So for the CFL to come back and have a better number than they did 2 years ago, I think it certainly shows you the core following that the Canadian Football League has. But also, there still is an appetite to watch this, and that can't be anything but good news for the folks in the CFL office, I'd imagine.
It definitely is. And I remember during the pandemic, Hustler, and I'm sure you do too, that everyone was talking about the NBA bubble and them getting back to play, or even the NHL bubbles, and saying, oh, well, these ratings are going to go crazy because people are at home and there's nothing else to do, especially in Canada with our love for hockey. But as you mentioned, those numbers were down year over year. So the fact that the CFL has come back, and at least in week 1 for that season opener, I'm waiting for the other ratings to come in to compare them also to week 1 overall. But the fact that that game was up, just over 30% from 2019, considering also that game in 2019 had the Riders playing in it, which generally draws a bigger TV audience. If you remember, it was Riders Ticats in 2019 in week 1. So this time you have Ticats Bombers, and they outdid that rating by 30%. Certainly a major positive for the CFL.
Well, great stuff. We'll look forward to everything you guys have cooking over at 3 Down Nation this weekend, and I can't wait for the games and can't wait to have you back again sometime, JD. Thanks so much for doing this.
You bet, Hustler. May the winners continue to be yours, buddy.
Yeah, there he is at JDunk12, and 3 Down Nation is the website. It was great to have John Hodge with us on last week, and certainly Justin just does a phenomenal job, and it is a must read for all CFL fans. Speaking of power polls, we've got one coming up for you in just a second. I think you're going to like it. Before that, do want to thank our friends at Little Brown Jug Brewing for their great support of Winnipeg Sports Talk. I'm sure many of you had an ice cold 1919 or maybe dipped into that summer variety pack on the weekend. You can still get your delicious Little Brown Jug delivered straight to your home. Easily hit the website. It's never been easier to get Little Brown Jug delivered right to you. Order by 4 o'clock for same day delivery in the city of Winnipeg. It's all there at Little Brown Jug. And check their events page too. They had live music and a DJ on the weekend out at the Tap House on William Avenue on the patio. I know they've got an opera event happening next Wednesday for those of you that might be interested in. And it's certainly a great place to meet up with some friends and have a few great beers down at Little Brown Jug Brewing on William Avenue. Or you can grab your 1919s or that summer variety pack, including the Hefeweizen and the Summer Lager at your local beer or bottle shop in and around the province of Manitoba. Assiniboia Downs is back, live racing tonight. Man, this might be the first time all season that Darren Dunn and the gang have a wet track. We'll see what that means coming up tonight. They go to post at 7:30. You can pop down if you're fully vaccinated. 50% capacity on the main level as well as outside. And if you do want to make a reservation in the terrace dining room, you can do that as well. VLT's open daily, 9 a.m. to 12:15 a.m. Remis and I will get to our picks for today's races a little bit later on. And What a crazy, crazy finish yesterday on the PGA Tour at the WGC Memphis St. Jude. Harris English and Bryson DeChambeau cruising. Both of them blew up. It allowed Hideki Matsuyama to shoot a 63 to get into a playoff, along with Sam Burns. And Abraham Answer, who ended up winning the playoff and gets his first official PGA Tour win. And I know our folks over at Breezy Bend were probably paying attention to that on the 19th hole after a great round. Course looking great. This rain will help Breezy as well as many of the courses around. Got that sod on the newly redone 6th hole. If you're thinking about a great spot for you and your family to golf next year, find out more at breezybend.ca or give our pal Corey Johnson a call over at Breezy Bend, and we'll hopefully see you there next year. All right, we'll get to Coolbet lines a little bit later on. Great stuff with Justin Dunk and JD Bunkis. Let's get Remis back in here. Remo, I know you've got some takes on the CFL season, and we spent a lot of time talking Jays and the hockey news right off the top of the bat, but it was a wild, wild weekend to start off the 3-down game for the year. And, you know, we talked so much about how, well, we don't really know anything going in. What we do know is that we probably should have just hammered every underdog last week because you would have went 4-0.
Yeah, great conversation with Justin. I was super fired up for the start of the CFL season, just talking fantasy with some guys in chat. But yeah, we had I was on the Bombers. I thought they could win. That wasn't surprising. Maybe it was surprising that Hamilton and Brandon Banks couldn't really do anything. They had the one drive for a score, and that was it. I think that was how much they couldn't score, and they got a tough matchup against Saskatchewan. The BC Saskatchewan game was so bizarre with Mike Riley. He didn't start, and then you heard his elbow was hurting, and then he came in the game, and you could tell he couldn't throw the ball, but he kept completing passes, and they almost came back.
I have no idea. Those were the worst passes ever thrown in the CFL that were completed. Yeah, and it just kept happening. I still have no idea about it. And just to your point about Riley going in, I mean, Rick Campbell literally was on with Farhan Lalji saying, yeah, this happened. Well, we're going to take it easy. If you can't play, you can't play. Nathan's our guy. And then they literally moved to the screenshot and 13's behind center taking the snaps for BC. I mean, I don't remember a situation like that. The one thing that it did sort of remind me of was the Chargers-Chiefs game last year in week number 2, where Tyrod Taylor was the starting quarterback. He got shot up before the game. The doctors apparently punctured his lung or something like that. And literally 15 seconds before the first play, they told Herbert that he was going in. And there's a famous story. He gets into the huddle, and Hunter Henry, the tight end, looks over at him and says, "What the hell are you doing here?" It was that short of a decision, and it sort of sounded like that was what happened with Riley saying, "I just can't go" at the beginning of the game, and they got way down 31-0. But the combination of Rourke, Riley, and then Rourke again certainly made a game for it. It was it wasn't close in the way that we thought it would be, but it ended up being a pretty exciting finish. It seems to be par for the course in the Canadian Football League.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too with the Tyrod Taylor. I remember, for fantasy, if you had Tyrod, I mean, it was literally right before. And I know there are a lot of people were saying, CFL wants to partner with betting. They want people to gamble. They don't even announce the quarterback is. So I'm not really sure, the real story. But it was weird when Rick Campbell in that halftime interview was like, yeah, we're going to rest Mike Riley, do what's best for him. And then he came in the game and played great. I don't want to say played great. He completed a lot of passes that looked horrible. And credit to, as I see a former Bomber, actually, Lucky Whitehead, has making a huge impact there, making a house call. And
got him on the board.
He was looking pretty good. But so that game was entertaining. I think Saskatchewan's pretty good. Although the second half, they totally shut it down. They couldn't do anything in the second half. So I'm not sure if that was just like they, thought the game was done and stopped playing, or they're not as good as they showed in the first half. Who knows? Toronto, I like McLeod Bethel Thompson. He can throw for a lot of yards. Maybe he's prone to make a mistake, but they took on and beat Calgary, and I think Calgary's kind of fallen off. You saw Bo, trouble gelling. He's got a lot of new receivers. I think some of them are talented. I like Josh Huff. Kamar Jordan is healthy, and he had a pretty good game. Maybe Calgary, I think they're going to be good, but I mean, the days of them running away with the division, I think that's behind them. I think it is the Bombers as the clear as a clear favorite. And Justin was talking about power rankings. We did power rankings. They're on our Instagram page, so it's in the description. Give us a like here. I'll bring them right up. One sec.
Yeah, let's get up. Let's bring up the official week 1 post week 1 Canadian Football League power poll here on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Position number 1 is held down by the defending Grey Cup champion Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Bombers at number 1. Positions 2 through 9 is everybody else. And that's it. The Bombers. I mean, all joking aside, Remo, I mean, I think really did make a statement that they are back. They are still the champs. And like we said on Friday, if you want to be the man, you got to beat the man. And Hamilton couldn't do it. And they're going to be a tough out this year. But we do know that as champs and starting the way they did, everyone is going to be coming for Winnipeg. And it'll be Ryan Dinwiddie getting his opportunity to go 2-0 Friday night here in Winnipeg as the 1-0 Argos take on the 1-0 Blue Bombers. We'll give the Argos maybe closer to 2 than closer to 9 after their big win. But as I said, it's Bombers and then everybody else.
Yeah, I agree. Bombers, clear favorites. I mean, Hamilton's supposed to have this incredible dynamic offense, and they managed 1 touchdown against the Bombers. And Brandon Banks, who seems to destroy the Bombers every time, they kind of figured out a way to stop him. And I keep thinking about Milt Stiegel, who was on Thursday, was saying, think of how many yards Kenny Lawler had last season in 2019 and double that, because that's what he's going to do this year. And he got off to a great start with 2 touchdowns from Zach Collaros, who, again, you talk about line play, the Bombers' D-line and O-line, pretty elite. And you give Collaros time, you watch him do his little scramble thing. He goes one way, spins another, and it seemed to work out. So you have to really be excited about the Bombers. And I would definitely put them at number 1. Maybe Saskatchewan 2. I think the biggest disappointment had to be Edmonton.
Oh, not even close.
I couldn't stop thinking about you and Dusty. Oh yeah, Trevor Harris. He's gonna lead the league in passing yards. He actually did have a lot of yards. Thankfully, interceptions don't give you minus yards because I had him in fantasy. I was pumped when he threw that pick 6 because you just get the ball back right after. But I don't know what happened to them. They had trouble moving the ball until the last drive when they finally realized Greg Ellingson was on the team and he's one of the top receivers in the league and he can throw. But I think it'll be better for Edmonton. Wilder looked very good. Darrell Walker looked good. So they had some guys. Shout out to Shai Ross. It wasn't Duncan Oreos, but he's making some plays there.
He was making plays.
There was the one interception I think you can give on him. But
that wasn't all him. I mean, that was a poor ball by Trevor Harris. I mean, he threw it into a very awkward area where he sort of had to reach, and he unfortunately for the Elks tipped it up, and the Red Blacks took it back 90 whatever yards to the house, and that ended up being the winning touchdown. I was pumped for Lapo and Nichols to get the first win. I do think after watching that game, I think it's going to be a long season for them, especially offensively. But for Lapo to get that win, Matt Nichols to get a W, I know there was a lot of people here in Winnipeg that were quite happy about that. Hey, congrats to Joey Panks as well as David Carpenter, who both cashed in on Abe Answer. 50-1 for Dave, and Joey was in there as well. I saw him doing a thank you tweet to our pal Jeff Feinberg. Coming up. You know what, Remo, just on that before we get back to the CFL, on that playoff, I got a text from Feinberg, and I don't know how he even thought to do this, but yesterday morning, I want to say Hideki was 7 or 8 shots back of the lead, and Feinberg put 25 on Hideki at 300-1. And so in the first playoff hole, Matsuyama had a putt to win that barely lipped out. I don't know how it went out. That was a $7,500 putt for Feinberg, and then had to watch Hideki miss on the next hole. I guess you can't win big if you don't swing for the fences. I couldn't believe he had the stones to even make that. But you want to talk about a heartbreaking bad beat? That putt, I literally fell to the floor when I saw that one go in and out because I knew what was on the line.
Oh. A $7,500 putt? That's pretty bad. I don't think I've had a
300-1.
Yeah, I don't think I've had anything that close. So he seemed to have a lot of winners. So I'm sure I'm sure Feinberg will find a way to bounce back.
Well, he will. And speaking of winners, we got to give a shout out to my pal D. David Lowe, who was the winner of our first WST CFL DraftKings contest. And I'm just pulling up the results here. I know Dave won on the final. And then speaking of Panks, it was a good weekend for Joey Pank because he came in at second. I took down third. AZ Mitch WHT took fourth, and Loudon CA took fifth. So congratulations to everyone. And this is, and if people hadn't played the CFL DraftKings before, the final 4 plays in the final game, the Edmonton-Ottawa, I think I went from 6th to 1st to 3rd to 2nd, back to 3rd in the last 4 plays. I mean, there was something happening on each and every one. Everybody had a piece of some of the guys. It was an absolutely thrilling way to finish week 1 for our first ever of the season DraftKings contest.
Well, they made that, here, I can pull it up here. Yes, there's the winner, D. Devil. Who do you have? Caleres, Wilder, Kyron Moore was a pretty good pick. Not a lot of people had him. Dembski, Darrell Walker had a good game. Ellingson. It was probably the Ellingson making all those catches on the final drive probably put him over the top. That's
exactly what happened.
And I know I didn't have Ellingson. I had some other lineups and some other contests, and it put me down a bit. So that was definitely exciting. They had the chance there at the end too, Edmonton, like right on the goal line to complete, I don't want to say the comeback, but to defeat Ottawa. And a lot of people in chat saying, Matt Nichols, 70 yards? I don't know if he still has a shoulder injury, but he can't really throw the ball downfield. We're talking about Mike Riley as well, having issues throwing. We'll have to keep an eye on Ottawa, but good for them. Another former Bomber, Timothy Flanders, carrying the rock. I love seeing him back in the league. I thought he was pretty good with Winnipeg. He could catch the ball, he could run, and he's back making stuff happen for Ottawa, who we thought was going to be terrible, but they started off with that was the surprise of the week, because I saw everyone on Twitter saying, Edmonton's going to score 40 points. They're going to win. Oh. We had the spread. What did we say the spread were? Over 7? And they lost outright. Yeah, that's a huge disappointment for Edmonton.
Keep in mind, they had the ball in the 12-yard line, up 3, ready to go up 10, and then a pick 6 completely flipped that game. So, I mean, I'm not completely out on the Elks. I think their defense is good. I imagine their offense will get a lot better. And we'll see what we get at Ottawa. I mean, maybe their defense is really good. Keep them in games. But you're not going to win a lot of games in the Canadian Football League passing for 70 yards. So I'll just say that. T. Konopali, shout out to Transcona's own Zach Williams, making a start on the Stamps O-line. Always great to see you and some local guys get in there. And yes, T. Konopali, the Elks burnt my fantasy. They burnt a lot of people last week. But again, it was week 1. We knew that it was going to be done. And there's T. Konopali matching and raising Taylor Ewell and making myself official VP of the Logan Stanley Club with the Prez approval. Great to see the Logan Stanley Appreciation Society growing in the chat every day here on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. All right, Remo, let's get to the Coolbet lines. As JD Bunkis mentioned, this is sort of a very lean day for wagering. The Jays aren't even playing. They're traveling out to the West Coast. We've got 5 games on the slate, and for some reason the Yankees-Royals game has no money line on it right now. You can only bet on the run line. Yankees -1.5 and -118. Cincinnati is a favorite over the Indians. Milwaukee a big favorite over the Cubs, who traded their entire team. Same case for the White Sox, -200 in Minnesota to take on the Twins. And the Padres later on, -270. So some big heavy favorites right now on the Marlins. Let's checking out the World Series winner. If you do like the Blue Jays' chances of maybe going on a bit of a special run, still a pretty good number on the Jays. 27-1 right now on Coolbet. And of course, just 3 games out of the wild card. 3 games out of the wild card. So 27-1 kind of might be fun to see if they can go on a bit of a road. I'll tell you what, Remis, if the Jays do get into the playoffs with the arms they have now in the starting rotation, bullpen still concerns me, but with that lineup, they'd be a scary team for anybody to play in the postseason if they can get there.
Yes, I absolutely agree. I know BA was telling me he bet on the Blue Jays, and they're 3.5 back. I don't know. I think that's actually not. I mean, could be some good val. So if you are in on the Blue Jays, why not take a shot? World Series winner. There it is, plus 2,700. Might be worth have some fun. Give you something to cheer about.
Absolutely. All in on all the Jays games going forward. And as far as CFL futures, not a lot of movement. Despite the Bombers beating the Ticats in the first game of the season, Hamilton's still the favorite, plus 375. Bombers plus 425 as the top-ranked team in the West. Saskatchewan plus 550. Calgary and Toronto 7-1. I have to say, the team that probably improved their at least the general consensus on the squad this weekend had to be Toronto, Remis. I mean, that was a very impressive performance by MBT, McLeod, Bethel, Thompson. We know they've got Arbuckle there as well. And a lot of those big offseason acquisitions made a significant contribution. And then, of course, former Bomber quarterback Ryan Dinwiddie gets his first head coaching win on the sidelines for the Double Blue.
Yeah, just look at the receivers for Toronto. Eric Rogers from Calgary, former Stampeder, Devers Daniels, Ricky Collins Jr. out of nowhere, making a big impact. So I think Toronto, they got an offense. We'll see it here on Friday. I think a bit of a different test, maybe with the Bombers, O-lines, and D-lines. But Toronto, they've been pretty terrible for the last bit, but they seem to be maybe on the upswing, especially with MBT. I know a lot of people were saying that he should have started more games for them in 2019. He didn't, but I mean, the guy can chuck it, and he did help me in a couple fantasy lineups too.
Big time. I mean, that was the thing last year. And I remember that game against the Bombers when he went absolutely off on Winnipeg. That was sort of right when the Bombers had that little lull, then they got it together and went forward. And obviously we all know how it ended after Zach Collaros went in as the starting quarterback and the team won that championship. But yes, overall, it was a great week in the Canadian Football League, and very much looking forward to getting into week 2. Get your tickets if you haven't already. Friday night, IG Field, Bombers and Argonauts, a battle of 1-0 teams. It should be great. I know anyone that was at the game on Thursday knows what an incredible atmosphere it was. Hopefully we'll have another gorgeous night and another great game to kick off a beautiful summer weekend in southern Manitoba with 25 or 30,000 of our closest friends out there at IG Field. We also are going to, we should actually do this right now, Remo. Let's get ready for the track. Have you selected made your selections yet so far for what we've got going on tonight at Assiniboia Downs?
Reluctantly, I haven't been winning, but I have the selections, and I was up a lot. Everyone knows I was up. I was beating you. And now I'm slightly down, but closer to even. So,
well, you're still beating me. Trust me on that. I need a couple more big ones like I had last week with the Derby and whatnot to get in cashing. But there's been positive momentum, and that's why I'm very excited for tonight's slate. Who are you going with?
I'm pulling up my selections here. Let me go to the HPI bet. Here we go. There it is. I got the Assiniboia Downs. Okay, I'm doing 4 Quinellas today. The 4 $5 Quinellas, first and second. We will start with race 3, horse 1, and horse 2. Harry, keep the change. I don't know if that's like from Home Alone, keep the change, a filthy animal, but and then I'm going with 2. Yes, it's me, Johnny G. And race 4, I like 5 and 3. So Happy Harley and Wire Me the Money. Hopefully they're wiring me the money after I cash this ticket. Hey-o. And then race 4. I'm sorry, that was race 4. I'm going to race 6 now. My bad. Race 6. I like horse 4 and 5. Shooting Money. Any horse that has money in the name, you know it's an instant winner when you bet on Shooting Money. And Quincy Express. And the last one, race 7, I got horse 5 and 6, Wits, Hurricane, and Dust Roller. So those are my selections for tonight. I've been on a losing streak. Maybe I think one of them, I hope one of them will cash. There you go.
I had my best week in a long time last week. We will hopefully keep it going. Race number 2, I'm going to put a couple bucks on number 2, Orange Theory, to win. And we're going to do a 2-3-5 triactor box on the $1, so that's a $6 bet. Moving on to race number 3, we're going to take number 2, Yes, It's Me, Johnny G. Take number 3 to win. We're going to move on to race number 4, and we're going with a 3-4 Quinella, Happy Harley, and We Need VLTs, Please. Couldn't not bet that horse with the casino back open and the VLTs on again. Happy Harley, we'll need VLTs, 3-4 Quinella. And then I'm going to go to race 6 like you did, but I'm actually on 2 very different horses. I'm going with number 1, Doc's Class Act, and number 3, Tapmaster for the Quinella. So we'll get those in. We make the bets over there. You can see it on the screen at hpibet.com. But the best thing about it is now is you don't even need to use hpibet.com because you can do it in person by heading down to Assiniboia Downs tonight and make sure you've got your vaccination proof, and you'll be good to go. And looking forward to it, probably maybe next week, maybe say Tuesday, Wednesday, depending on what the schedules look like. Probably get out there, and we'll invite all of you to come and join us, have a few, and hopefully win a few tickets. Remo, it's been an awesome show. I'm sort of disappointed that there's no Blue Jays game tonight. I mean, coming out of that weekend, I think there's going to be withdrawal for a lot of people that got into it, and especially now that the Olympics are over. I know there was a lot of talk about, the Olympics shouldn't be, shouldn't happen. You heard from so many of the athletes how thankful they were for the opportunity to compete. And got to tell you, the takeaways from the Olympics is that we're doing a lot of great things here in Canada, producing champions. Another gold medal yesterday in the sprint. A girl who was a University of Alberta soccer player 4 years ago and had never been on the bike. And of course, the entire country still glowing from the women's big gold medal victory on Friday. Overall for Team Canada, the only thing that was missing were fans and friends and family supporting the athletes, but the nation was here, and man, did our Canadian athletes step up and get it done.
Yeah, what an exciting 2 weeks. Watched a lot of it. I'm going to have to figure out new plans now in the evening. Was great. Normally my wife and I are arguing about which TV show to watch, and for those 2 weeks, our plans were predetermined. No arguments in the household. So you just, sit down, put it on. There'll always be something on any time of the day. We had amazing coverage here in Canada. I know we spoke with Sean Fitzgerald on Friday, who, covered that for The Athletic, but literally CBC 24/7, and on their app, you could watch any event. You could watch the replay at any time. We are very lucky to have such good coverage, because I know in the United States, many fans were very frustrated with NBC's coverage.
It was great. Terrible. It was terrible. Hey, you know what? I just before we finish up, I want to read an email that we got from a listener, and I hope Ken Hilton is listening right now, because this was just so nice to hear, and I think echoes a lot of people that maybe didn't know where we were, but that have found Winnipeg Sports Talk lately. Here's what Ken sent in. I feel like I've been wandering around in a bleak and endless desert into which I was suddenly dropped last February when Ma Bell played such a really dirty, unforgivable trick on all of us, but especially on you folks who were their faces on TSN 1290. I'm an older guy, 85, and a bit of a techno dinosaur, and so it has taken me a while to get the bearings which have enabled me to actually be listening to Winnipeg Sports Talk Radio through Amazon Music. It is as if I have found an oasis in the middle of the desert. It's wonderful to hear your voices and listen to the sports news that is relevant for so many of us. Thank you for picking up the pieces and getting this show on the road. From Ken Hilton. Ken, cannot thank you enough for that. And we also got a great one on the YouTube channel over the course of the weekend from the incredible Hey. Just seeing this today, I honestly think this will turn out to be a blessing in disguise as far as replacing the 1290 all sports format. It is a little bit different. We're not on the AM radio dial, but Remo, I think the one thing that we found, many people, we hear it all the time, actually prefer this format better. They can listen on demand. They know it's going to be there each and every day. But I got to tell you, that email from Ken, and because we were concerned that some of our older listeners, just might not get to us as to where we are right now. But it seems like day by day, people that were wondering where we're at are finding us right now. And we do have to give a big sense of gratitude as well to so many of the people, especially the regulars that are with us here on YouTube every day, as well as the podcast listeners, for continuing to spread the word and let people know that daily sports talk is still alive and well here in Winnipeg.
Yeah, there are. It amazes me, but I know that there are people out there that don't know that we are here. So we do appreciate those emails and the YouTube comments from everyone. I do have to follow up with Ken. He asked some other questions, but I think there was maybe a bit of a learning curve at the start, but now that we're up and running, we have the chat here very lively every day. I think that, yes, I think that there are definitely, this, you can make a positive out of what was a negative. And I think this is going to be very exciting. And sometimes we have to think, we are literally just getting started. We are only 5 months in.
Yeah.
And look, we haven't even had a full Jets season. We did experience some incredible highs with the playoffs, but I think a lot of people very excited. I'm out, now that I'm out and about, people are asking me about the Jets, and I think you have to be excited. Look, about their offseason, they saw a need, and they definitely addressed it. Now, you did lose Brossois and Perreault, but you hope your young guys can step up, and I think we'll wait and see on the backup goalie. But the backup goalie for the Jets never played that much anyways. But I think it is an important position, especially in case of injury. But again, the point here is, people didn't know that we were here, and they are now finding us and letting us know. And even 5 months in, there are still people out there, which is why I know people who have bought some of our merch, whether it's a koozie, a mug, a shirt, hoodie, wearing it out, and other people saying, "Hey, Winnipeg Sports Talk, what is that?" And they're like, "Oh, really? I didn't know that," because I think people do want to know the information about the Bombers that we're talking about, and the Jets, most importantly, and the other Winnipeg. We've talked to Gold Eyes. I know we'll be getting into Ice as they go, Valor for sure. We do touch on, but we're very, very Jet. We can agree that the Jets are the ones that do. We can see from the numbers drive a lot of the traffic, but we do try to touch it all and touch on all the leagues as a whole as well.
Yeah, you know what? There's plenty of time for us to hit all of it. We'll always focus in first and foremost on our Winnipeg teams. But like today with JD Bunkis, everyone's talking about the Blue Jays. I think the entire country is excited about it. And I think that's just going to ramp up now that the Olympics is over after 2 weeks of everyone focusing on Tokyo, to realize, oh my God, the Blue Jays won 9 of 11 at home, are knocking on the door of the wild card, added Berrios from the Minnesota Twins, and have the most fun, exciting young lineup in the major leagues. So we'll be talking Jays. We'll certainly be all over the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. And as we mentioned off the top of the show, the focus for Winnipeg Jet fans this week is the Neal Pionk contract. Arbitration date set for Friday. I think everybody hopes that it doesn't get there, and the Winnipeg Jets and Neal Pionk can figure out a deal, hopefully long-term, to keep the Minnesota native here in the Peg for a long time after 2 great seasons here in Winnipeg after the Jacob Trouba trade. All right, gang. Well, tomorrow should be a fun show. We'll have the latest on the Jets. We'll hit the Bombers. Manny Arsenault, longtime CFL star, is going to join us. And coming up a little later on this week, more. Actually, maybe we'll hook up and see if we can get one of the guys in the Bombers to join us over the next couple days. Might be a good time to catch up with the club. Back at practice today, we can tell you there was no Andrew Harris, there was no Darvin Adams, no Josh Johnson, and no Patty Neufeld. Hopefully, Neufeld won't be out. Big part of that offensive line, and we'll see what Johnson's status going forward. And as far as Andrew Harris and Darvin Adams, those will be the big names we'll be watching Remo heading in. Certainly Darvin Adams, I think, is very difficult to replace. I mean, he is the deep threat for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. The guys like Kenny Lawler and Dembski certainly stepped up in his absence, but to have all those guys together, I think, gives Zach Caleros that much more. As far as Andrew Harris goes, there's only one guy in the backfield, and the one thing that we can take away from the performance of Brady Oliveira on Thursday is that the Bombers are in pretty good hands if their longtime all-star running back can't go for the next little while.
Yeah, Brady Oliver, he got off to a bit of a slow start, Huss, but in that second half, he really helped ice the game, and he kept going hard, and you could see how worn down Hamilton defense was. So we weren't sure coming into the game if it was going to be a time split because Augustine had success the previous season. For fantasy purposes, I rolled the dice. I took Oliveira, and it definitely paid off. But we'll have to wait and see for fantasy purposes about the DK salaries this week. I agree. I think Adams, having him in would give them another weapon. But you had Kenny Lawler step up, Dembski, even Charles Nelson, who's more active in the return game. He was getting in on it too. And I did see people in chat always coming. Everyone, and on the YouTube comments, we've gotten Facebook messages. Where's Cam Meredith? We haven't heard from him. Everyone is asking. He got injured. He's on the practice roster. He lives in Winnipeg, so I think they'll hold a spot for him. I hope he can come healthy and play. Love to see what he can do. We've seen highlights of him in the NFL. Health, injuries have been a concern in the past, so hopefully it's something. But he'll be back. When he's back, you'll hear it here. But that is why no one is high on him, because he's been injured and there's been no updates.
Yeah, Leighton Janis, going to be lots of Brady O in next week's DK lineups. That's for sure. Although the Toronto defense was pretty impressive, especially the guys they have up front. We'll be all over that game. We'll get some of the guys covering the Bombers on, and more CFL talk coming up over the next few weeks, and leading right into Friday's show, which will be a game day edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily, with the Bombers hosting the Toronto Argonauts coming up on Friday night. Great start to the week. Got to thank JD Bunkis. He's a good friend and do a lot of stuff with him through the Coolbet connection. It was great to have him on the program for the first time. Definitely, if you're looking for a fun show, especially if you're a Jays fan, guys will be talking almost exclusively Jays in the morning. I guess it starts, 9 o'clock or 8 o'clock here to 11 a.m. If you're listening online from Winnipeg. And Justin Dunk, one of the best in the biz, 3 Down Nation. He and John Hodge have such great CFL content for CFL fans. It was great to have him on the program. As always, big thanks to our sponsors, Canadian Club, Royal Sports, the Nick and Nicky DQ Group, Not Autocorp, Boston Pizza, Paramount Services Limited, Little Brown Jug Brewing, Assiniboia Downs, Breezy Bend, and Coolbet Canada. Folks, have a great night. Thanks so much for listening. If you're listening on the podcast, do us a favor, rate and review. If you haven't already hit the like button, please do that. Make sure you're subscribed and join us daily, 1 o'clock here on YouTube, in your podcast feed just after 3 here on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Have a great Monday night, folks, and we'll see you back here tomorrow at 1.
Oh, my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.